Hey everyone. You know, this past week, Doug, a lot of people didn't, well, first of all, a lot of people didn't know Channel Awesome and Doug Walker were going to release a Nostalgia Critic editorial, even though he doesn't call it editorials, because of the passing of his mom. And like everybody that's a fan of Doug's, my prayers and condolences go out to him and his family for the passing of his mom. But they did release the video this week, and basically the video was entitled, I think, something along the lines of, does PG mean anything anymore? And I've talked about this somewhat in a way in I think a video or two in the past, but for someone like Doug, who does a great job with these Nostalgia Critic editorials, to talk about it, for a lot of us really means something, because at least it's a vocal voice out there that everybody knows, that everybody pays attention to, and it probably, in a sense, kind of helps get things, situated, kind of organized, if you will. Because he brought up the topic of, does PG mean anything anymore in the movies? Because recently we've seen a lot of animated films by Disney and other studios that have been given a PG rating. And mostly, when you look at them, they don't really deserve a PG rating. They're more or less G, is what they are. And he also brought up the fact that how some PG-13 movies that could be borderline horror films, if not suspense films or whatever, get PG-13 when in fact they actually R-rated movies. They should be rated R. In fact, at the end of his video, he used an example on both sides of him of, Inside Out should be G, and it should be Happy That It's G, and Drag Me to Hell should be an R-rated, and it should be Happy It's R-rated. And he's got a point there. But in today's world, in today's society, if something is amiss in a movie, like let's say Inside Out, like if there's a fart joke, a burping joke, or whatever, well, not Inside Out, but something like Good Dinosaur, which also has a PG rating, then obviously in this PC world, this parental controlled world, you basically have to have a PG rating. And why? What's the point? I mean, look, let me give you an example here. The Peanuts movie is a G-rated film, and it did good. Look, it even says it right there. G-rated. And it was a blockbuster hit. People liked it. People liked the PG rate. Liked it. It had a lot of things going for it. And I also think one of the reasons it was given that G rating is because I think Blue Skies realized they couldn't probably make the movie. 20th Century Fox realized they couldn't distribute the movie without it being G-rated, because Charles Short's family might have said something. Because I'm pretty sure, let's not deny this, 20th Century Fox or Blue Skies, you guys were hoping for a PG rating, but then you realized it wouldn't get made, or wouldn't be a reality if that happened. You realize that the Shorts family would have said no. But with that said, and with the Peanuts, like I said, with the Peanuts being a good example, and I think he even brought it up as well, of a G-rated film doing good and being animated, then what's the point? Why is Disney and several other companies making animated PG-rated films, when in fact the majority of the time it's actually a G-rated film? And I think the thing he brought up is because it's the hip, cool thing to do, the edgy thing to do. You look at Pirates of the Caribbean, and it's obviously, all the movies are PG-13 warranted, right? Now you might say, well, that's not totally the case, Brian, because some of them are not totally scary. Some of them could be borderline PG-13, but they're actually PG. Which is a good example. Heck, you want a better example? Harry Potter series. a majority of the Harry Potter series, up to like I think the final 2, were PG rated. You get to the final few films, I think the final 2 or 3 films, or I think the final 2 films, and you get PG-13. Not just because the characters are now in their teens or anything, and the themes and the story arc are a little bit more mature, and the atmosphere is darker, if not more violent. But it shows you a huge transition. It's like, why now all of a sudden are you deciding to take all these PG-rated films, or like why all of a sudden now are you deciding to take out of all the Harry Potter movies that you've had out beforehand that have been given a PG rating, and now all of a sudden you decide the last 2 should be or at least the last one should get a PG-13. Why? All the others were the same way. All the others were kind of dark and stuff. They didn't warrant a PG-13 rating? What, because the actors and actresses were a lot younger then? Is that the reasoning? No one really knows. No one understands what the reasoning was. You know? And, you know, one could understand in a sense why. You know, one can understand in a sense maybe the reasoning a movie gets a certain rating and all that because of the darker tone, the more mature themes. You know, some people can argue that Inside Out, despite, you know, the fact that as Doug put it, it should be G-rated right off the bat. One of the things that probably made it PG was its psychological, in-depth look of the child's mind. Like what goes on in their mind, what goes on in the, you know, in the minds of the parents and other adults. You know, it wants to give that, you know, basically it's giving that more immersed, psychological, in-depth look at what goes on in the mind, visually, with visual representations like joy and anger and sadness and disgust and fear. It's giving that more visual representation through them of what goes on. And how if one is not with the other thing, and how if one is not acknowledged by the other, or not used by the other, or not needed, things can really mess up. You know, and the thing is, that can make a good argument for as to why Inside Out gets a PG rating, because of that psychological pull, that kind of in-depth look inside the mind. Now you could look at something like Angry Birds, and you could say, well, yeah, it obviously deserved a PG rating because it got its rude stuff, it's got rude humor, like it's got the freaking great eagle, the great bald eagle, whatever it's called, peeing in a lake that two of the 3 main characters or heroes of the film are swimming in, but yet they don't realize they're swimming in piss. Now you could argue that that's more deserving of a PG rating than maybe Inside Out, and that's a good argument, maybe because of stuff like that. But the point is, folks, the point I'm trying to get at is no matter how you look at it, most animated films by Disney just let my dog in. But like I said, most animated films by Disney and several other companies, they don't always warrant a PG rating. They warrant mostly a G rating when you look at it from overall. You know, when you look at something like, let's say, Frozen, you might say, well, that's kind of debatable. You know, some people think there's a lesbian incense going on between the sisters, and you might say that will cause it to get a PG rating. But when you think about it, how many Disney films before Frozen have been, you know, with a similar tone in a sense that with a similar tone have all had a G rating? Because it's true, a lot of them have had a G rating. I mean, I'll give you a good example. And again, you'll see, and like I said in the last video, you'll see this in my Blu-ray update too. You take a look at Beauty and the Beast. Here's a movie that came out in 1991, and another good example, in 1981, and then about 3 years later, you had Lion King, and these all had mature elements to them. They all had mature, like I said, they all had mature elements. They all had scenes of characters dying, getting hurt. You know, they had all these kind of things that you would relate to a PG-rated film, but they were G-rated. They were G-rated, but by Disney, by the Motion Picture Association of America. So the question is, nowadays, why are movies similar to those in tone getting PG? And again, I think what Doug said is true. I think it's mostly along the lines, it's the niche thing to do, it's the edgy thing to do. That probably the only way you're going to get audiences to watch a movie in theaters with their families is to give it a PG-rated film and make it PG, if not PG-13. You take a look at Out of the Shadows by Ninja Turtles. The past two movies have been PG-13. And you could say there's an argument for that reasoning. They got sci-fi, action, violence, and all that. That's true. But when you take a look at this last one, you say to yourself, well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's PG-13. It could be PG, borderline PG-13, but mostly PG. But you got a scene basically where Bebop and Rocksteady, after they're mutated, are looking at the freaking dicks. So what, is that a reasoning for the PG-13 rating? There's an argument there. But it's not just applying to movies that either we think they should be G-rated and not PG-rated, or should be PG-rated and not PG-13 rated. Another thing that Doug brought up was the fact that movies like Drag Me to Hell, some of these other, suspenseful horror films that have gotten PG-13 ratings over the past several years, like Drag Me to Hell, like the Origi movies, the one that came out and the one that's coming out. All these suspenseful films, all these horror films in the sense that have gotten these PG-13 ratings. And a lot of people wonder and a lot of people like Doug question why did they get PG-13 ratings when in fact when you look at it, they're R-rated films. And I think because just like Disney and several other companies that market their animated films nowadays with a PG rating, they look at the fact that since a majority of their cast are young adolescent actors and actresses that are just out of their teens and in their early to mid-20s, either portraying teens or young college students in these situations, that if they don't make it PG-13, it's not going to be hip and with it to drag that audience in. To drag that young adolescent audience in. They don't think it's going to do that. Because primarily, obviously, something's going off in the minds of the executives at some of these studios, thinking that if they slap a freaking PG-13 rating on these movies that are actually R-rated horror films, that it's going to basically drag in that teenage audience. Because that's what they're aiming for. That these are the kind of films in their minds that a teen audience will like over anything else. And maybe they're right, I don't know. But as Doug said at the end of his video, movies like Drag Me to Hell and movies like similar to Drag Me to Hell and Inside Out should be glad that they get the actual ratings they should get. Like Inside Out, movies like Inside Out should be happy that they get a G rating. And movies like Drag Me to Hell, similar to that, should be happy that they get an R rating and be done with it. But the only reason movies like that get a PG-13 rating, movies that, like I've mentioned, like Origi and the upcoming sequel to it, which is a Hasbro film, believe it or not, the reason they get the PG-13 rating is because someone obviously looks at it and says, hey, it's hip and cool, it's going to bring in that teenage audience that's our targeted demographic. So you're telling me that a PG-13 rated horror film is mainly targeted for the teenage mind? Like basically you're looking at this on the same level as, let's say, the Twilight series? That's what you're looking at? You're looking at the same level as the Twilight series? Or the Divergent series? In a sense, that's what you're looking at? That's how you view it? It's not on that level. It's not on these levels. I mean, I have a novel book somewhere, I don't know where I put it, called Chain Letter. called Chain Letter 2. And I've read that thing. Well, a majority of it. And it is the kind of book that could be adapted into a film. But when you think about it more so, it could be adapted into an R-rated film. There's no joke about that. Yeah, they could tone it down a little bit and say it's PG-13, because when you read the Chain Letter series, mostly Chain Letter 1 and 2, they are mostly meant for teenagers. So again, I don't know if maybe that's why they rate movies that should have R ratings PG-13, because they look at it the same way they look at a freaking teen novel, like let's say the Twilight series or the Divergent or Mockingjay series. Because it's a teen, it's something based around something that's something similar to a teen novel, we should give it a PG-13 rating. That's not the case. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't have to do that. You should say, you know what? It's a horror film. Let's just give it the R rating it deserves because of these elements that are in it, and be done with it. It's the same thing with movies like 50 Shades of Black and the upcoming 50 Shades Darker. You know that when 50 Shades, not 50 Shades of Black, but 50 Shades of Grey, and its upcoming sequel, 50 Shades Darker, you know when 50 Shades of Grey came out, there was an argument in the debate whether or not to give it an R rating or an NC-17 rating. And because it's based on a freaking romantic erotic novel, a soft erotic novel, they decided to give it an R rating. Why? Because if they would have gone and given it something else, the NC-17 rating, they wouldn't have drug in the audience or gotten the box office hit that they wanted. They wouldn't have basically been number one at the box office the first week, and maybe broken a few records for February, box office records for February, if they would have gone the NC-17 rating route. They wouldn't have done it. That's why they did the R rating, despite the fact that people have said right off the bat that 50 Shades of Grey, and I'm pretty sure they're going to say it about 50 Shades Darker, are NC-17 films. And you should be, just like, and to quote what Doug said, they should be glad that they are NC-17 films. They will still bring in money. They will still be box office hits. They just will not be R-rated. And I think Doug basically said it best. Everything here with this MPAA system is insanity. It's basically the MPAA system is broken. You know, they tried fixing it back in the 80s after one of the Indiana Jones movies proved to be a little too violent for PG, and thus the PG-13 rating came around. Heck, someone said in commentary of the Transformers 20th Anniversary DVD, they said that there was only 2 ratings to choose from at the time when the movie was being created. 2 real ratings, PG and PG-13, PG and R. And they had to go the PG route because of the violence. If they did the R rating, there is no way Transformers the movie would have gotten an audience at all, or even have the cult following it has today. No one would be talking about it. No one would be going up and buying the 30th Anniversary edition on Blu-ray and DVD. And the reason being is because if they would have done an R rating, we wouldn't be talking about it today. PG was the best route to go. So now the question lingers. Is the MPAA system ever going to be fixed again? Are they going to come up with another compromise to distinguish what's really G-rated material, PG-rated material, PG-13, or even R-rated and NC-17? Are they ever going to go back to that? Are they ever going to be able to figure out a way around that? Are they going to be able to make a compromise for that? God only knows. God only knows. But I will say this. Next year you have several major movies coming out. Several movies a lot of people are looking forward to. Heck, you just had the teaser trailer for Smurfs The Lost Village come out. And a lot of people are thinking, what is that going to be rated? That's going to be the first thing going through the mind. And I guarantee you, unless the MPAA system does something to fix and correct this situation and basically put an end to what Doug puts the insanity, the brokenness of the system, to where finally you can distinguish what is G and what is R and what is PG, what is PG-13, and what is NC-17. Until they do it, I guarantee you, unless that MPAA system is fixed, next year's Smurfs, The Lost Village, is getting a freaking PG rating. You know that already. Heck, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, the movie, or My Little Pony the movie, 2017, coming out next year in October. A lot of people will say, oh, it's going to get a G rating. There's no doubt about it. I don't think so. Unless things get fixed, unless things get sorted out, My Little Pony the movie is getting a freaking PG rating, whether you like it or not. It is. It's going to get a PG rating no matter what. I mean, we thought 30-something years ago the rating system was broken. It's nothing compared to where it is now. And I think that's the one thing Doug meant with this video. Is, does PG mean anything anymore? Well, apparently it doesn't. It doesn't mean diddly squat anymore, due to the fact that if I was just checking my time, obviously you now notice it's in a second video, so I do apologize. But, you know, I think that's what Doug was bringing up with this Nostalgia Critic editorial. It's the fact that when he asked the question, does PG mean anything anymore? Obviously it doesn't really mean anything. Back in the 80s and even the 90s, it meant something. It meant like, okay, it's got violence, it's got some swear words. It's only, and you need to have a parent with you. So you're telling me nowadays, some of these horror films that get PG-13 ratings, a 13-year-old could go and see, but they got to have the parent, can go see on their own. But if a kid, maybe 12 years old, wanted to see it, they have to have a parent. Even though it's technically an R-rated film. I mean, this system is so broken to the point that it can't be taken seriously anymore. It can't be. It cannot be taken seriously, and that's a sad fact. So the MPAA, they have to do something. They have to get this fixed. I mean, I understand and in a way respect that you want to bring in the crowds. You want to make that money. And that you realize, hey, if we rate this a rating that it really needs, it's not going to do it. But if we rate it this, if we give it this rating, it's going to do it. And I can respect and understand from a business standpoint you wanting to do that. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work, and it never will work. And sooner or later, unless something happens, there's going to be a lot of backlash coming back at you guys. I guarantee this, when My Little Pony the movie gets its first teaser, its first trailer, and then it gets its rating, and it's rated PG, there's going to be a lot of families that are going to say, and I'm pretty sure the whole freaking Brony Pegasus community is going to come out and say, hey, we might be fans of the show, but even the show itself is not TVY7. I mean, the only time it was TVY7 was for the season 4 finale, and that was it because of the battle sequence between Twilight and that Lord Turagon, or whatever his name is. And that was it. That was the only other time, that's the only time we ever got a Y7 rating. Most of the time it's been Y, basically G. So I can almost guarantee that there'll probably be some kind of discussion, some kind of controversy if it gets a PG rating. Because even those fans will come out and say, hey, look, you can have all the celebrity guests you want, but if this trailer and the synopsis and everything is telling us anything, it's a G-rated film. Don't be worried about that. But then again, we got to look at who's distributing it, right? Hasbro, Allspark, and Lionsgate. There's your answer. There's your answer. Overall, basically what I'm trying to say here in this two-part reply is I do agree with Doug. This is Doug, Nostalgia Critic. And again, my condolences go out to you and your family for your mom's passing. But I do agree with him on this. The system is broken. It needs to be fixed because it is utter insanity that movies that should have an actual R rating or a G rating have the opposite. They have PG and PG-13. And movies that should have NC-17 have R. And movies that should be PG have PG-13. So, I don't know. All I'm going to say is this. Hopefully they fix this. Hopefully they fix it immediately, because you know what? Sooner or later there's going to be tons and tons of backlash. Sooner or later somebody's going to come out and say, look, it doesn't matter if you want to be edgy. It doesn't matter if you want to bring in the big bucks during the weekend. These movies are not PG-13. They are R-rated. These movies are not PG. They are G-rated. These PG-13s are not PG-13s. They're PG. These R-rateds are not R-ratings. They're NC-17. Sooner or later, someone's going to come out and talk about that, bring that up in Congress. I guarantee you that's what's going to end up in Congress, in State or House, and something's going to be done. And the MPAA, they have to fix this, and they have to fix this now. So, I mean, because think about it. If that was the problem with the TV rating system, imagine this. WWE made a mistake one time when they put a TVG rating on their Monday Night Raw program. Imagine if they did that right now. Imagine they put a TV PG rating on SummerSlam, and towards the end you saw freaking Randy Orton getting busted up by Brock Lesnar. Is that G-rated? You hear Brock on the mic doing a promo, and you have several words bleeped out. Is that G-rated? No, that would screw things up. People would go after WWE. That's why they have TV PG-V or TV PG-LV. Because at least they're saying, hey, this is our acknowledgement of being a PG-13 product. Or a PG product with violence. Simple math. It's simple intuition. It's simple acknowledgement. You cannot rate something you cannot rate something another rating when you know it's actually this rating. You can't rate a horror movie PG-13 when you know it has R elements in it. I mean, yeah, you can, with a PG-13 rating and, you know, maybe PG once in a while, you can sneak in a word that's more suitable for the rating of PG-13 or R. You can do that. But most of the time you don't. Most of the time it's not done that way. So all I'm saying, folks, all I'm saying is this. MPAA has to do something about this, and they have to do something about it now. Because if they don't, I guarantee you, 2017 is going to be the beginning of a huge backlash. And I think the MPAA knows that. So that's just my reply in two parts to Doug's video of does PG mean anything anymore. Again, my prayers and condolences go up to Doug Walker's family and with the passing of his mom. And that's all I'm going to really say, guys. Let me know what you all think down below. Take your time in watching these, and I'll talk to you all later.